My aunt had recently gotten divorced and had just bought a new house in a new city. She originally lived in a big city in Tennessee and moved to a little quiet town. She invited us to come stay. My mom, dad, older sister, and I. We're from Indiana. So we plan a trip to go stay. My cousins are just a bit younger than I am. I remember arriving and thinking that it was kind of a creepy little town that had an eerie feel to it. There was no one around, very few cars, and no kids playing in the neighborhood. It's the first night there, and we all get settled in to go to sleep. My parents take my aunt's room. My aunt sleeps in one of my cousin's room. I sleep in one of my cousin's room with her, and my sister sleeps in the living room with my other cousin. It's probably around 2 a.m., and my cousin and I are still up talking. We start hearing like a knock coming from the outside wall. We think it's just the wind considering their backyard is fenced in. I then mentioned to her how I felt like I was being watched, and she commented that she did too. So we assume it's just my sister and cousin spying on us. We're all between 10 and 16 years old. A little while, probably 30 minutes later, I hear my sister from the living room quietly calling for my aunt in a shaky voice. Although I'm the younger sister, I'm also the more protective sister. So I go running to the living room to see what's wrong, and she points to the back door. I look over, and we can clearly see the doorknob and door shaking violently. I run and get my aunt, and as soon as she turned on the lights, the door stopped moving. We go get my parents, and my dad goes outside and checks the whole house and finds scratches on the back door around the handle. It's creepy to think that this person was probably watching my cousin and I for a while before he decided to try to break it. I'm just thankful he didn't actually get in. We're also not sure how he got in the fence. It's a decently tall wooden fence with no gate. Needless to say, I didn't sleep the rest of that trip. I don't think anyone did. I live in a small apartment, just me and my dog, and I'm a creature of habit. Every day when I come home from work, I hang my keys on the hook by the front door. It's a routine, one I never deviate from. So one day when I came home and found my keys missing, I was immediately confused. I checked my bag, the pockets of my jacket, even the countertops. Nothing. I spent the next hour turning my apartment upside down, but the keys were nowhere to be found. I couldn't figure out where they had gone. I knew I'd hung them up like I always did. After exhausting all possibilities, I gave up, figuring I must have misplaced them somewhere. The next morning, I was getting ready for work, running late because I still hadn't found the keys. As I rushed to grab my bag, I glanced at the hook by the door, and there they were. My keys hanging right where they always were, as if they had never been gone. I froze, staring at them, my mind racing. I live alone. No one else has access to my apartment. How could they have disappeared and then reappeared overnight? I felt a pit form in my stomach, but I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that maybe I'd been tired and missed them the day before. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. I changed the locks that same day, but I still can't shake the feeling that someone or something had been in my apartment, moving things around when I wasn't there. I was 17, and my room was on the second floor of our house. I always liked having my blinds closed at night. Something about the darkness outside made me uncomfortable if I left them open. I couldn't explain it. It was just a weird feeling I had, like I didn't want to see what might be out there. One night I was lying in bed scrolling through my phone when I had this strange sensation like I was being watched. I brushed it off at first, thinking it was just my imagination. But the feeling didn't go away. It actually got stronger, like someone's eyes were on me. Finally, I gave in and peeked through the blinds, expecting to see nothing. But instead, I saw a face staring right back at me from the window, on the second floor. I jumped back, heart pounding, but when I looked again, the face was gone. I couldn't tell if it was a man or a woman, young or old. All I knew was that something, had been staring in from the outside. My parents didn't believe me when I told them. They said it was impossible, that no one could get up there. But I know what I saw, and I haven't opened my blinds at night since. It was late, probably around 11:30 p.m., when I finally left my friend's house. We had been catching up over dinner, and I hadn't realized how late it had gotten. The drive home was about an hour and a half along mostly quiet highways. I didn't mind the drive, It was peaceful, especially at night when there weren't many cars on the road. I put on my favorite playlist, settled into the driver's seat, and began the journey home. About 30 minutes in, I noticed headlights in my rearview mirror. At first, I didn't think much of it, but the car was approaching quickly, way faster than I was driving. It pulled up right behind me, tailgating like it wanted me to move over. But there was plenty of space for the driver to pass me. Literally no other cars around. I thought it was strange, but maybe they were just in a hurry. I stayed in my lane, waiting for the car to pass, but it didn't. It kept tailing me, so close that I could barely see its headlights. That's when I started to feel uneasy. I sped up a little, hoping to create some distance, but the car matched my speed. I slowed down, and they slowed down too. I switched lanes. So did they. At this point, my heart was pounding. I wasn't sure if I should pull over or keep driving. What would I do if I pulled over and they followed? I decided to take the next exit, thinking maybe they'd just keep going. I signaled and exited the highway. The car followed. I tried not to panic. The exit led to a small, quiet town with just a gas station and a few closed shops. I pulled into the gas station, which was well lit and had a few cars parked near the pumps. I figured it was my safest option. As soon as I pulled in and parked near the store entrance, the car behind me screeched to a halt on the road and sped off into the night. I sat there, heart racing, trying to process what had just happened. I didn't get a good look at the driver, but something about the whole situation felt off. Why had they been following me for so long? What were they planning to do if I hadn't pulled into the gas station? I never found out, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something bad could have happened if I had kept driving alone on that dark, empty highway. Years ago, when I was 8, my family lived in this big, weird house, kind of on the edge of a small town. The school district was in the middle of a big restructuring, so even though we were only a couple grades apart, my brother and I went to different schools and took different buses. This left me as the last person to leave in the morning and the first person to get home in the afternoon, which meant it was my job to make sure all the lights were off and the door was locked. One morning, I noticed the basement door was open and the light was on, so before I left, I turned off the light and closed the door. When I got home that afternoon, the light was on and the door was open again. I just assumed that I'd forgotten to actually take care of it when I noticed it in the morning, so I went over to turn off the light and close the door. When I got to the top of the basement stairs, I looked and there was a big shadowy male figure towards the bottom of the staircase. I freaked out, slammed the door, and pushed a bunch of boxes against it, and then went and hid in my closet. For months, I didn't tell my family because I was positive what I had seen was a ghost and didn't think anyone would believe me. Then about a year after that incident, my mom and her boyfriend realized that small amounts of money had been going missing for months, totaling around $800 to $900, but never more than $60 at once. So we all walked around the house with flashlights trying to figure out how they could have gotten in. Turns out some creep was climbing in through a small hole in the outside of the house, shimmying through a crawl space, then coming up into the house through the basement. Realizing I had been alone in the house with him on at least one occasion was one of the worst, most terrifying moments I've ever had.